17 U.S.C. 107 federal law allows citizens to use copyrighted media for fair use. That is criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody.
And I said want to say, I'm an American. And I said want to say, I'm an American.
Oh no, oh no.
Forth your praise. Kuma, Yahweh, we are futsu yebeka, we are usumi feneka lifeneka. Kuma, Yahweh, we are futsu yebeka, we are usumi feneka lifeneka. Kuma, Yahweh, we are futsu yebeka. Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.
Welcome to Into All Truth. My name's Rachel, and thank you so much, all of you, for your prayers and your words of encouragement, and for signing up for memberships and subscribing for free to intoalltruth.net, where we offer various products, but also, most importantly, our virtual calendar and Chaya Eat Life and Fast Life Hebraic Lifestyle book, so that you can walk in righteousness, so that you can walk the ancient path and keep the Moedim. May the Spirit of Truth, the Ruach HaKodesh, break up the fallow ground of your heart, and may the seed of righteousness be sown in your heart, so that Ruach HaKodesh can lead you into all truth and show you things to come. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. You don't know how much your support means, so I thank you so much for it. Okay, so American gods. Who are the true Egyptians? And who are the Amorites? Everyone's always saying, yeah, it's Esau, Edom. Yeah, he's mixed in. Saying it's the black people. Yeah, that's true. This is not about race, it's about race. There are black and white skinned people, if you want to use those terms, or melanated and demelanated people on both sides of the spiritual darkness and light battle that we are currently having. And this is actually an excellent show that demonstrates that. I don't like the show. I don't recommend watching it if you lack spiritual discernment, because it's very seductive. There's a lot of spells and witchcraft going on that can hypnotize you and actually give access to those spirits into you. So I would not recommend watching this show at all. However, I have checked it out, and so it's an excellent reference for the spiritual battle that we are currently in. I'm also using Ed Harris from Westworld, because it's again the same story of this same spiritual battle with people of both skin colorings on both sides of the issue. And these, to me, and we're going to see, and it's going to be revealed, that these are the true Amorites. And so let's get into it, family. And you know, they show this actor, who I've actually worked with him on set. He does look very East Indian, actually. He's mixed race, British, the lead actor on American Gods, but really this guy's the lead actor. But he's kind of the star. But he does look very East Indian, you can see, okay? And that's who the real Hamites are, is the East Indian people. But these are the Canaanites, and she's probably more exemplary of a Canaanite, and he is really more exemplary of an Edomite slash, say, Ashkenazi, okay? And so that is, these are the representatives of the Amorites, the Americans, the kingdom of Babylon, if you will. And of course, we have people of all races on all sides of the issue. And so I think these people here, though, both best represent the genetic Amorites, okay? And so let's get into it. Let's find out a little bit more. Of course, we know the prophecy to Abraham was this: know for a surety that your descendants will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And of course, the 400 years is depunct here. And also that nation whom they serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great possessions or substance. And you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come out here again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So who are the Amorites?
Something that jogged my memory about how important Oogie Oogie was in my life. If I did the Oogie Oogie, you'd know what to do, right? We can cheer the Americans.
If I did the Oogie Oogie, you'd know what to do, right? We can cheer the Americans. Okay.
All right. Ready? Oogie Oogie Oogie! Oogie Oogie Oogie! 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 Oogie Oogie Oogie! Now you can do that.
Take that home.
Yeah, we're gonna take that back to because ours is like say ho.
Yeah.
Say ho.
Yeah.
In
Canada, it's sorry about that. Sorry about that.
For only Og of Bashan remained of the remnant of the giants, and behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron, iron kingdom, right? Is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth thereof, after the cubit of a man. Og was not destroyed in the time of the flood, for according to one legend, the waters reached to his ankles. Another tradition states that he fled to Palestine, and where there was no flood. Well, we just don't know. But we do know that there may be those who store themselves under the sea, and this is why that's the marine kingdom of Satan, and they fight so hard to swim well in water, and there are so many water creatures, so they can't be destroyed by flood, is the hope, right? We're going to get into Og and Augie, but before we do that, I just want to make this disclaimer. So I want to assure you, everybody, that this is not about skin color, although that does have an influence. It is about the race. So there are evil players on both sides of skin color, but this is about the seed of Israel, who are the race and the grafted in, okay? So this is all about the race, and so now we're going to define those nations so people can know who they are, to know whose house to leave. But we're going to give a history so you can understand how skin color does affect identifying the people of the race and the people of Egypt, the true Egyptians. And so this is why so many white-skinned people identify themselves as the Egyptians, because they are right. Not all of them are white-skinned, but many, perhaps most, especially of the Canaanites, are. There is in the book of Enoch the story of the birth of Noah, who is the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And in a very powerful sense, it is a prophetic birth. And what is the reason for this? The reason is that when Noah comes out of his mother, he is, as described here in 106 and 2, his body was as white as snow and red as a rose, as you can see with these stones here. And a lot of the skin of the angels is often described as being like these stones or burnished brass. And so, and the hair of his head was as white as wool. And his demdema, in other words, his face was beautiful. And as for his eyes, when he opened them, the whole house glowed like the sun. Rather, the whole house glowed even more exceedingly, so his eyes lit up the room. And when he arose from the hands of the midwife, he opened his mouth and spoke to Yahuwah with righteousness. So Lamech was afraid of him and fled and went to Methuselah, his father, and said to him, I've begotten a strange son. So this is association. This whiteness is associated with strange flesh. And the angels, he said, he's not like an ordinary human being, but he looks like one of the children of the angels. So the children of the angels at those times of heaven to me, okay? So they were white. They had white flesh and light eyes. His form is different. He's not like us, and his eyes are like the rays of the sun, and his face glorious. It does not seem to me that he is of me, but of the angels. So this is what the children of the angels look like. And I fear that a wondrous phenomenon may take place upon the earth in his days. So I'm beseeching you now and begging you in order that you might go to Enoch our father and learn from him the truth, for his dwelling place is among the angels. So Enoch lets him know that Noah is a sign for the future times, that he is going to be different. And we're also told on the ark that Yah is not going to contend with man for very much longer, and he's shortening the days of their life, and they're going to be eating meat. Now, one of the things with meat is that it raises your white blood cell count. This is what a lot of the vegetarians have discovered. There's a famous vegetarian who did this study on this. And so it does whiten you, it bleaches you out. And of course, as I keep saying in my Stolen Identity opening, that in order to enslave a man, you must make them white. And so why am I saying all of this? Well, we're about to talk about the white giants, and the white Egyptians, and the white Canaanites. And in case you're concerned about this, whether you're on either side of the issue, this is, again, like I just said, it's not a skin issue. This is about the purification of Israel, and the purification of the children of the fallen. Because remember, the scripture says that, behold, the days will come when Yahuwah will mix the seed of the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the seed of man and beast. And so this is part of the redemption of the nations through the bloodline and seed of Israel. So Israel literally is burnt to ash and becomes dung on the earth, becomes a blank slate in order to become an offering for the nations that they might rise up. And of course, there are many scriptures that talk about this, promises to the Gentiles of being grafted in, where Yah says that I will call those who are not my people, and call her my beloved who is not my beloved. But then eventually, once again, they will return to the land, and Yahuwah will call once again his true children sons of the living Yahuwah. So the promise is still to Israel, but there were many promises made to the children of the fallen. Yah says he will move Israel to jealousy with those which are not a people, and provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. Yah says that your houses, Israel, will I give to a people that shall come, which not hearing heard of me, yet shall believe me, to whom I have showed no signs, yet they shall do what I have commanded them. They've seen no prophets, and they shall call their sins to remembrance and acknowledge them. And I take to witness the grace of the people to come, whose little ones rejoice in gladness. A people who, though they have not seen me with bodily eyes, yet in spirit they will believe the thing that I say. And he'll give them all the prophets, it says here. And so that is a promise of the Gentiles being grafted in. There's a couple more stories I want to refer to, and that is the story of one of the kings of Syria who is from Damascus, right? Because remember, Damascus ruled over the Medo-Persian kingdom, and those were a mix of Shemites with Japheth. And so there is a king, he's told by his Israelite servant that he should go and visit the prophet Elijah to be healed in Israel. His name is Nahum, and he's the king of the captain of the host and highly respected. But he is a leper. And so the servant says, go and be healed in Israel. So Nahum sends a letter to the king of Israel saying, this letter is come unto thee. Behold, I have therewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou may recover him of his leprosy. And so then Elijah, hearing of the fear of the king of Israel, who's like, I don't know how to heal him, sends a messenger unto Naaman and says, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. And so he protests, but then he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan according to the saying of the man of Yahuwah. And his flesh came again to him like unto the flesh of a child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, and all his company came and stood before him and said, behold, I know that there is no Elohim in all the earth but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, as Yahuwah liveth before whom I stand, I will receive none. That's what Elijah says. He won't receive the blessing. And he urged him to take it, but Elijah refused. So Nahum said, shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules, burden of earth? For thy servant will thenceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but only unto Yahuwah. So this is the reason why he's converted. Okay? But a foolish servant of Elijah goes later, named Gezi, and he chases after Nahum, and he takes the money from Nahum. And so when he gets back, Elijah says to him, where were you? And he says, Gezi says, thy servant was not hither or thither. And Elijah says to him, went not my heart with thee when the man returned from his chariot to meet thee? And now thou hast received silver, and now thou hast received raiment, olive yards and vineyards, and sheep and oxen, and men servants and maid servants. The leprosy also of Naaman shall cleave to thee, and to thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence, leprous like snow. So this is really an analogy and a story of Israel and the transfer of the kingdom from Israel to the Gentiles. So you see, because Nahum sought this blessing, this cleansing, he was blessed to become a worshiper of Yahuwah. But because Gezi sought only material things and didn't seek Yah, he was cursed and turned white with leprosy, just like Israel. And of course, in the story of Jonah also is told to preach to Nineveh so that the city can be saved, and he's thrown into a fish. We all know the story of Jonah. He comes back, the fish spits him out, and his appearance had changed. What happened to his appearance? There are many accounts of people swallowed by a whale who actually their skin bleaches and turns white. They even almost go blind, and their hair goes blonde and white, or even falls bald. Okay, so there's an example of a 18th, 19th century sailor that this happened to, and many accounts like this. So he's completely changed. And also he puts on sackcloth and ashes are a way of bleaching. That's what soap is made from, to purify. He had turned white after being swallowed by the fish. So then the 2-leaved gates are open to Cyrus, Osiris. And we're going to find out who Cyrus is. We're going to find out who all these people really are today. But it did start with Japheth, a mix of Shem and Japheth, and he ruled the world through the Medo-Persian, Babylonian. Saw from the example of the Persian king Salam that they had to contend with these white giants, who very much taking them over in the future as Esau took over the Assyrian kingdom, turned them white. Just like Israel's gone into captivity, into the land of Egypt again, they have been turned white. And now in this white state, they preach the good news to the nations for their salvation and repentance. And so this is all the story of Israel and the sons of Shem, Ham, the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth being cut off, right, in leprosy, then becoming a blank slate that Yah can rewrite his own image on, and then being reborn again into the image of Yah. And so this is why this is not a skin doctrine that we're talking about, but it is, once again, a seed doctrine. Okay, it is about the Resh.
If a man has a plague of leprosy, then he shall come to the priest, and the priest shall look and see. If it is a white spot in the skin, and it has changed the hair to white, and there is some of the sound part of the squick's flesh in the grate, it is leprosy growing old in the skin of the flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and separate him because he is unclean. And if a man or a woman has it in them a plague of leprosy in the head or the beard, then the priest shall look at the plague and see. If the appearance of it is more yellow, lower than the skin, and in it there's a thin yellowish hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a scale. It is leprosy of the head or leprosy of the beard. And if the leprosy has come out very evidently in the skin, and the leprosy has covered all the skin of the patient from the head to the feet, according to the whole looking of the priest, then the priest shall look and see. The leprosy has covered all the skin of the flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him clean of the plague, because it has changed all to white. It is clean.
There's no doubt in people with higher melanin, natural higher melanin, that it's far more likely that that melanin will be coating the nucleus, the cell wall of the nucleus of the DNA. Now the point about that is that ultraviolet light, which is often used to splice DNA, is blocked by that melanin. It absorbs it. It doesn't allow it in to interfere with the DNA. And it could well be, and this is Nigel's thesis, that this was a blocker for them when they were trying to genetically alter the species. And therefore, when maybe just out of random mutation, something like an albino came along, they discovered, wow, we can get straight in.
Right.
And it may well be that the paler-skinned nation, people on the earth, maybe have that pale skin because of this genetic experimentation to make things easier for them to work on human DNA. And in fact, Professor Steve Jones argues that this thing about vitamin D being, paler skin being there to allow vitamin D to be absorbed and so on, all these theories about why pale skin happened in the first place, he believes it's not an adequate explanation. There is no real explanation or justification for the need for pale skin at all.
Yeah, because I think if
dark skin is always an advantage in every circumstance.
Right. As most people would just automatically assume, well, they went to live in the north where there's less sun, so therefore their skin changed colour. But that's not the case.
According to Professor Steve Jones, an eminent professor of biology, that is absolute nonsense.
Right. Okay.
There's just no reason at all for pale skin.
You would want to absorb more light. And, you know, I mean, why did we lose hair if we came to a colder climate, etc.?
Yeah.
So obviously something's wrong with that idea.
Right. All right. And Nigel contends that the white races, the northern European races, have probably had the most interference from this outside entity called the grey alien.
Yeah, and he doesn't say that. It's very important to say he doesn't say that from the point of view of a kind of reverse racism.
Right.
It's just he's letting us know that, right, that's there, you may need to do something about it, and maybe suggesting ways that we could do something about it. And if you look at the record of the European nations throughout history, in terms of colonialism, imperialism, and what they've, the havoc they've wreaked on the world, it makes the point
that
really.
It's the blue-eyed white races that have got their finger on the nuclear...
As far as the other side of it, interracial marriages, since the 1970s, there has been at least, if not more, a 7% increase in interracial marriages. And this is the way it's supposed to go. Because the bottom line is, in order for the Moorish legacy, the sun-kissed people of earth, or the family of men, to become the true inheritors of the land, okay,
when Israel entered the land of Canaan, which is the land of Israel, just for anybody who's confused, it is the land of Israel. Yah said, when you come into the land of Canaan, which I gave you for possession, and I put the plague of leprosy in a house of the land of your possession. So Yah struck the Canaanites with leprosy to turn them white and diseased. And there was actually a leprous order of knights in Jerusalem far after it fell in the 1100s. And there is a whole history among the Persians of them fighting off the white giants of the north. Even a Persian man having a son who is struck with leprosy, who is mythologized as a giant who fights off a white demon from the north. And so that is how they categorized leprosy and giants at the time, as being associated with white or rosy-skinned people. So Cali, California, Galileus, that is the land of Ham and the Hamites. Khalid, all right, the Muslims come from there after they mixed in with Abraham. They became the Ishmaelites, right? And so these are the East Indians, the Indians in North America, Galileus, all right? And so, of course, Esau, Edom mixed in with them and began to rule over the Egyptian Empire. So he became an Ethiopian. Nehemiah Theodore in 775 AD, he reconquers the American empire of Kalilas. Okay, so Theodoric, you know that's 2 doors. You know that Nehemiah, these are Ethiopians. Okay, and so he reconquers the empire of Galileus, and which was ruled by Silvanus Toltecus. So this is the Toltecs. Silvanus meaning a Solomon. And remember I told you these are titles. This is an actual King Solomon. This is 775 AD. And they're saying this is the hereditary ruler of the former Jewish Roman colony. So California is a Jewish Roman colony. Okay, this is Rome. This is Chittim. And it's also ruled by Esau, who's calling himself Jewish. So now when you're talking about Jewish people, you're talking about Edomites after the time of Esther, right? And that's when the Esauians began to call themselves Jews. Here, the most important thing to realize is that this great ruler of Sumeria, right? A great Roman Jewish ruler, so we're talking Edomite, an ancestor of the Swan Knights, Barbar Katzans, Edomites and barbarians, or a mix thereof. He also had a fleet of trading vessels known as the ships of Solomon or the swan boats. So here Esau is mimicking the journeys and kingdoms that the Israelites had. And this is the ships of Solomon, or the 7 swan boats they talk about. So Septimus 7 nations, right? The 7 nations that are not of the seed of Adam, the seed of Yah. Anyway, so he took these trading vessels, and the ships are shaped like a swan with sails like the wings of beautiful gliding white swan. And so they sail after the defeat of Silvanus Toltesius, a member of the royal family, were sent back to Europe, where they were under the protection of Nehemiah Theodorus and his family. And the legend of Dun and Ogier are based on the activities of this family, descended from Duan, Tugon, Ogier, and Silvanus Bravo. And anyway, so it goes into the legends, and this is connected to the giant ogre heads of the Olmec, where they are found. And also, when you're talking about Og, you're talking about Og of Bashan. When you're talking about ogres, you're talking about giants. The German kings that we have in France and in all of these different cultures, these people that claim to be of the lineage of David, they actually are, but they are a mixture of the domain of the Vikings, and they have strong bloodlines for sure. But they call themselves, they are of the star families. They believe they are David's descendants because of Solomon, and they are a continuation of that line, but they are truly the Vril of the lion, the island of Dragos in the midst of the sea. They say they're the continuation of the line of Jesus, but they mean Esau's. Okay? They say that they're the continuation of the line of David, and by that right, they have the right to rule. Okay? They believe in the book of Revelation, and they believe that they're currently in the 1,000-year reign. They believe that they're in charge of taking over the kingdom as the star families of this 1,000-year reign. Okay? And of course, Satan is ruling in the earth right now. So that is their God. So it is Esau's Christ, and it is another Christ, it's Ha-Satan. So everything that they've done for this last time since the destruction of the temple has been towards reuniting the people in Israel and building a new temple. So Zionism is really an offshoot of the star families, and that's the doctrine that they believe in. This is where Zionism comes from. Zionism is Zihonism, King Sionism. Sihon of the Amorites refused to let Israel pass through the land, but of course they had to defeat them in war because that was the land of Shem and the land of Israel. And so they, in this group, there's more of a worship of Baal, Ashtaroth. They have a pyramid at the Supreme Court building, for example, like in Australia. These are the descendants of the Fomorians of Ireland, the Atlanteans, Og of Bashan, and Canaan. They tattoo their bodies. They put tattoos all over their bodies, okay? So they do mark their bodies. Okay, so you see the tattoo markings on the body. Now there's an account of these white Neanderthals in the Lost 10 Tribes of the Promised Land, and it says that somebody comes upon them and captures them here in this chapter, page 36. The 4 men whom they carried away were young and beardless, so they usually don't have beards or they don't have hair on their head. And they wore nothing but a sort of apron made of cord, which they hung a number of palm or reed fibers of 1.5 to 2 hairs breadth, which formed an effectual covering. They were uncircumcised. So you know they're uncircumcised, they're not Hebrews, right? These men were spoken to in several languages, but they understood none of them. So they weren't speaking Hebrew because the conquistadors and explorers were all speaking Hebrew. So these people were not speaking Hebrew. They were not taller than their captors, were robust limbed and courageous. And so they refused wine, only drank water. They ate wheat and barley. So these were relatively healthy people. And they were, it says that they were honest. And it said that the maidens went around naked. And I'm just letting you know that these were the people who were found in those lands, in the West also. Okay, so you see the tattoo markings on the body. These are wigs that they used to make because they were bald-headed. Gonna chase those crazy bald heads out of the town. And so here you see the bald heads in Benjamin Franklin and you see in Washington, right? So they would always wear wigs. This is why you see a lot of the Europeans wearing wigs, because they're bald. So here's some of the Europeans wearing wigs being visited by the 10 tribes. All right, there's Esau, and you see the aquiline nose. But you see these guys look kind of more Negro-y, right? Less aquiline-y, right? And so do these guys. And so here is an account of the West. All right, this is like in South and Central America, and you see all the black people, the black slaves, how they're being terrorized. We see kind of an Esau figure, a bit whitewashed here. But we see again, it's the bald heads. The bald heads. Okay? And people of the giant descent. So it is well known that they had giants in these lands, and they were the bald heads. We're gonna chase those crazy bald heads out of town. So they're wearing wigs in these pictures, and it's suspected that they wore these helmets because the Ashtaroth poles, the electrified cities, would give them worms in their lymphatic system, and it would make all their hair fall out, and they would go bald. And so that's how they're bald heads. So they would wear these wigs, the men, on their head. It's like how the Wi-Fi and all the defilement and all of that kind of stuff is doing the same to people now. Same thing. That's the price of that power of the air, to cover the baldness. Just like how the Egyptians wore wigs. Just like how all the founding fathers of America wore wigs, because they were all bald heads. They were all descendants of these giants.
They used hats to collect the data. The tech inside of them was slow, primitive by today's standards. They used hats to collect the data. The tech inside of them was slow, primitive by today's standards.
Fair use.
I thought I was wrapped in power, and I realized I was naked, alone, as I've always been. That all my power was illusory. We are all alone.
The children of the fallen and the sons of Yah saw the daughters of men were very fair, and they took them to be wives, all of which they chose. The children born to them, those were the giants of old, men of renown. Generally speaking, this is the fourth man. It's not Yahusha. It is the fourth type of man, who is a mix of fallen angel and human woman. All right? And so here's some of the names: the sons of Seir, the Horite, who inhabited the land, Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah. Okay, so that relates to the Anunnaki. Okay, and so these are the Horites, the people of Mount Seir, who are really the Augean descendants of Og, the dead things that come up from out of the sea. They are the one who survived somehow the flood and were mutated and were worked on in the factories of the fallen angels to recreate a new man. And so I just want to remind you of that. The word Anunnaki and Anun, right, comes from, it's an Egyptian pharaonic Hamitic word deriving from the Strait of Anain, Anunnaki, okay? And this is between, here it's between Canada and Eastern Europe, all right? So when we zoom out on this beautiful azimuthal map, which I absolutely love, on David Rumsey's map site, you can see the site there. We see that this is the Strait of Anain, of the seed of the Anunnaki, and this is how it was able to, they were able to get in amongst the seed of Japheth, because here we have what you call Japan, Yevon, the land of Yevon, and whenever you see movies, you'll see movies where they talk about the Middle Passage, and whenever they're talking about the Middle Passage, they're talking about crossing here. From here to here, the shortcut to this side of Africa, because, you know, east is east and west and west. But anyway, long story short, that is the Strait of Anunnaki, all right? The land of Canaan here, and the land of Japheth. Watch my videos on the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth to get clarity on this. So that is the fourth man. We're going to way into detail on this. The genealogies of Seir, the dead ones who come out of the sea, and the inhabitants thereof, as quoted in Job. All right, see, these are some of their names: Lotan, Shoval, Zibeon, Anah, right? Anunnaki, Dishon, Etzer, all right? Uz, Bilhan, all right? Anya, Anunnaki, again, Anah, all right? And you can see this line mixes in with, and in particular, Elon the Hittite, who's coming from the Canaanite line. It also mixes in with these guys. And Esau mixes in with them to create Eliphaz. And of course, he is very much blended in with the fallen angel seed and with Japheth. And with Egypt, because of course, as we always say, he inherits the kingdom. And so, back to the Egyptians. All right, there's a lot of debates about the Egyptians and who, were they black or white? And of course the answer is both. I already showed you that video on my channel that talks about the Professor Smalls. He looks identical to this skull, actually. The thin lips, the pointy face, the pointy chin, the kind of more fine bone structure. All right. But the Ananakim, you can see from these images, had red hair, were known to have red hair. Maybe straight, maybe curly, because Esau Edom was the twin of Jacob and he had red hair. You see it in black people and you see it in white people. Okay? So this is not about Resh, it's about the Resh, the head, the leader, the sons of Yah. All right, so Exodus 1:8 says, a new king or Pharaoh rose in Egypt who did not know Joseph. These were the Ananakim, who sometimes bore the name of Raphaim, Zuzim, Zamzumim, Imim, Avin, while the Horites or cave dwellers are also specifically referred to as the inhabitants of Seir. All right, the most numerous inhabitants of the land when the Israelites first entered are referred to as Canaanites. Sometimes they're more restricted to the name of, these are the subsets of the Canaanites: Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites, Girgashites. All right, different from the people of Mount Seir, but they mix in with them. Both have the fallen angel seed. The Amorites are most frequently mentioned and are ethnologically the most interesting, as if claimed for them by Sayce. They were of a light complexion and blue-eyed, and besides being dolichocephalic or long-headed, I'm not sure I agree with that. This description, however, has been based on the colored pictures of Amorites found on the Egyptian monuments, racial types from Egypt, which to a certain extent are conventional, so we can't really go from that, right? But ancient origins tells us that Ramses had red hair, okay? And so when we go into this genealogy, we see that Ramses comes out of the line of Eliphaz and out of the line of Esau, mixing in with these other lines, okay? And this is where Ramses comes from. We've gone over this in many of the videos, all right? And so, and I've said to you before, what color is Ramses' hair? Ramses II had red hair, all right? We've got all our red-haired pharaohs here. You see the head shapes. They don't tend to have a long head in this case. They seem to have more of a light bulb shaped head. And we've watched my head shapes video. It goes into it if I've got it up still. And so this has been confirmed. And there's this tie to Amalek of Mount Seir. So sometimes Mount Seir can be called Mount Hermon, I guess. And there's been this huge DNA race war about who are the giants, right? Who are the giants? And who are the real Egyptians? So they really want to say that the Egyptians are red-haired, white-skinned people, and they're right. Okay? So there's a neo-Nazi group that says that Tutankhamun was white. And so let's do a conversation about Og. Day. So when we look at the Horites, look at someone like Ed Harris, you see in the sound of the word, if we work with the etymologies, just sounding it out on our own, Harris, Horus, Osiris, Horite, Harafa, Raphaim. All right, that's just an etymology to try to follow. We see this head shape, which is not the dolichocephalic, it's more of a light bulb shape, which we have also in the Somalians, have a similar head shape, okay? He's one of my favorite actors, I got to tell you, by the way. I just love his performances. He's amazing. I really enjoy him. So this is not a judgment against him because we don't know where his heart and soul are. Hopefully it's in a good place, but he's pretty high up in Hollywood, so we don't know, right? But when we look at these people, we are looking at these ancient photos and pictures of the giants of North America, the white giants. We've gone over it. I just went over it. I'm going to go over it again and again in this video. But they were red-haired giants. leprechaun, because leprosy was when your skin goes white, because eventually Yah would choose the white-skinned people, or the sons of Japheth, really, first and foremost, to be called his children, all right? So the leprechaun, you'll see him, he's no longer, in American Gods, but he's got the red hair and the white skin, and he's a leprechaun, okay? Red hair, remember it. Okay, see all these red-haired people, red and blonde-haired people with white skin. When we look at the genealogy of the Canaanites and Japheth, we say that the Mau people came from a combination of Canaan and Gomer, all right? And they were called the Han or the Hun. And then a combination of the two of them is the Khan, K-H-A-N. All right? And they come from the land of Sinom. And Canaan, again, I'm going to repeat this, became the father of Sidon, his firstborn Heth, the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite, the Hivite, the Archite, the Sinite. So this is who the Canaanites are. And so they're associated with names like Horus or Horite. Even though the Horites were from Seir, they mixed with them. They mixed in with them because these are all the fallen angel seed. Okay? Dead things are formed from under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof, Rephaim. So this is where the Horites came from, the people of Mount Seir. Okay? And we even have the testimony of who Og is. All right? And we're going to get it from some of those leaders, those presidents. But let me just show you something first. Let's go through Og. When you watch Australian rules football, they scream out, Augie, Augie, Augie. Poor Australia now. I don't even know if they have football anymore. But they scream out Augie, Augie, Augie. And they also say Aussie, 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 because they are descendants of Og, of Bashan. Okay? All right, Ogden Morrow. This is a character. All right? Ogden Morrow from a fictional story. But you know, Hollywood is really just a means for the fallen to create gods, to create their own gods or movie stars, which are gods, mythologized stories about people they call so-called gods. And so this character is Ogden. Og Morrow is the creator of Oasis and is the best friend of James Halliday, etc., etc. His appearance is described as a cross between Albert Einstein, so Einstein, and Santa Claus. So we know Santa Claus is of Satan, right? Despite being rich, he's humble, and he has these gregarious simulation systems. All right, so he's from Ready Player One, Steven Spielberg movie, okay, Hollywood movie. So there's an Augean character. We also have Hulk Hogan. Sometimes they put an H before Og, okay? So when we look at Hulk Hogan, he looks a lot like Santa Claus, right? And he looks a lot like a giant, right? He looks a lot like a white Viking, right? With the handlebar mustaches. He had a questionable, somewhat alleged sexual relationship with his own daughter. Sound like the fallen angels, right? That's their culture. And here he's doing a bit of trans, as is the culture, right? Culture of the fallen angels. Now he's really looking like Santa Claus here. He's a bald head, though. He's always got on some kind of a head wrap, a head cover, because he's a bald head. All right? Hogan family history. Hulk Hogan. So remember Hogan's Heroes. Hagian. Hagian. It's Gaelic. Gaal. This is not Gullah. This is Gaul. The Gauls. Where is the skull of Golgotha? Skull of Golgotha. This is, I don't know if I'm spelling it right, but this is supposed to be a place where a skull is under a mountain. This is supposed to be where Yahushua was crucified, on top of the skull of Golgotha. Now this is, I don't believe that's where Israel is, but I would believe that he was crucified on top of the skull of Goliath. Why? Because that's what the word says. And it is what Yah says it is. Right? So that's the skull of Golgotha. Okay? Those are the Hogans. Hogans. All right, Augie, Augie, Augie. All right, and so they try to come up with mythologies. This is often sung as what was being mentioned by people in a place called Cornish. Cornish, and that ironically, and they say, oh, it means pasties. It means Cornish pastry sellers. They say that's what it means. Well, when we look at American gods, the latest episode is actually set in a town called Lakeside, where they have Cornish pasties. All right, they have Cornish pasties. So they are associated with the culture. And of course they have Jamaican patties are like this, and you know. So, all right. So this lead actor, he's looking very he looks like a brother, right? But he also looks a bit East Indian, a bit Middle Eastern Hamitic, right? And then there we have, of course, our Edomite / Ashkenazi-ish lead as well. All right. We went into this, the Hogan family. Augie, Augie, Augie. Not calling on you. So yeah, the chant came from Cornwall. And that's where they say it's a chant for a Cornish pasty. Well, probably these Cornish pasties probably were made with people. All right. And it comes from Welsh rugby. What is Australian rules football? Rugby. Very violent rugby with no equipment. So it speaks to the violence of the Rephaim. Here's another Og. Here's a good Og, John Ogilvy, who wrote the book America, which is an excellent account of the truth about how the people of America looked when they arrived. Okay? So the true East Indians and so on, they were originally black. He's accounting for his own people, right? And of course, this includes the white giants and everything are also accounted for. All right? So he did a true representation and remembrance of both Africa. Og, king of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people at the battle of Edrei. Okay, so we go into this and we see that this in Numbers is when Moses led Israel out and against the Amorites. Okay? And we've already shown that Israel would inhabit the land of these giants and all the buildings and structures which they built. Okay? The Israelites were great in stature as well, according to 2nd Esdras. Consider you thou before also, how that ye are less of stature than those that went before you, because the earth is older. All right, so when Israel is great in stature, it's right. When the fallen angels are, it's wrong. It's just Yah's law, okay? Because it's by election. He will bless who will bless, he'll curse who will curse, and it doesn't depend on your desire, effort, or ability. He just has his chosen seed. But we are in the season that is ending where the Gentiles and the others are grafted in. So, Heshbon was the city of the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab and taken all of his land. Okay, so Israel took all these cities of the Amorites. All right? So Sihon, Sauron, right? Went to war against them. So these are some of the names of their kings. Heshbon was the city of the king of the Amorites, okay? And Sihon. Let's look at Sihon. So this is one of the kings. A warrior, king of the Amorites. Sihon. Now, I'm not going in deep into the letters. It means a sweeping away, a leader of the Amorites reigning in Heshbon. So this is our reference to Og. Okay, Og is the giant. And they smote them and their sons. So that's in relation to Og. King of Bashan. All right? And these are also the bulls of Bashan. The bulls of Bashan. The balls. The bull is the symbol. Is a symbol of Egypt and Cyrus. And these are the evil enemies of David. Okay, so the bull always, you can watch the gods of America, the gods of the Amorites. All right, so when we look at American gods, this is a great parallel. And you see he does look very East Indian. He's mixed race, but he looks like he's East Indian very clearly. They're often featuring what? A bull goes after the main character when he's a little boy, and that is Hasatan. Okay? Daughters of these people slept with the fallen angels, the bulls of Bashan. Og, king of Bashan, he dwelt at Ashtaroth, high places, Ashtaroth poles, those buildings with those structures on them. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants, and behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron, and it was, is it not in Arabah of the children of Ammon? All right, and that land was given to Manasseh. Og, king of Bashan. All right, of the giants, the Rephaim. So that means they're descendant of the fallen angels. All right, they're their children, old tribe of giants. So they took these two kings of the Amorites in Deuteronomy. All right. And the cities of the plain and all Bashan unto Salcah, the cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All of these men of Og, all right, they are the Philistines. So what you're going to find is the Amorites are the Philistines. Mount Hermon is called Siron by the Sidonians, and the Amorites call it Sinir. So that's where Mount Hermon is, where the angels came down and mixed with women. All right? And this was, again, we said Og, he was King Og of Bashan, the survivor of the giant Rephaites. He's an Amorite whose height was like that of the cedars, mentioned in all of these scriptures. Okay, so he is a giant. And what do? They cast auguries, is one of the episodes ogre, right? So we go and look at it in Wikipedia, and they're associated with birds. What will Babylon become? Babylon will become the haunt of every evil bird. And augury is part of the ancient Roman religion. Now the Romans are Chittim, Hittites, mixed with Esau, Edom, and they interpret omens, and they observe the behavior of birds. An eagle is the symbol of the bird of Esau, Edom. Watch all my videos. All right? So augury. And the Amorites are the Philistines. Okay? How do we know this? Here we have. Some scholars claim that the Philistines and Amorites are synonymous. 1 Samuel 7 and 14. All right, so the cities which the Philistines had taken from Israel were restored to them, from Ekron even to Gath. And then he says, the coast of Israel, the coast thereof did Israel deliver out of the hands of the Philistines, and there was peace with Israel and the Amorites. Okay? So, you know there was peace with Israel and the Amorites because they are the Philistines. And they are all synonymous with the Canaanites. So they were ruled by the Philistines. They were ruled by Goliath. And so we're going to do a little bit of a trip around Harris and Horus and the symbolism involved with American gods, because it's very apt. So when we look at Horus, Horus is the bull, right? He's the bison. Okay? And now there's a whole Horusan family of Virginia, which established Virginia. We've already gone into the Augeans, the Ogs, people of Og, who were sent to Britain, but are originally originating from North America, right? And Central and Upper South America, okay? So the Harrison family, the Horus son family, all right? Founding father of the United States, Benjamin Harrison. He was signatory to the Declaration of Independence. We see the bison and we see the eagles, symbols of Esau, all right? And symbol of the Hamitic kingdom of Egypt and Babylon, right? 3 U.S. presidents. Now, note here that I said signatory to the Declaration of Independence. When we look at that word, it means they're independents. They're dependent upon the slaves and the Hebrews. All right? So that means that they're independent because they aren't supposed to be here. So now they have a source of power. So they feel independent, but they're actually independents on their slaves. All right? 3 U.S. presidents, William Henry Harrison, Benjamin Harrison, and Abraham Lincoln, all 3 came from this Harrison line. Not so sure about Abraham Lincoln because he was black, but he could have been a black Edomite, right? Mixed in with these same bloodlines with the same stony features, right? That we see so often in his images, and even in the images of the black Abraham that they portray. Okay? So the Harrisons are among 4 families to have had 2 presidents in their number with the same surname. All right? The others are Adams, Roosevelt, and Bush families. So these are all the same families having multiple presidents. Okay? Family's lineage also includes governors, legislators, mayors, and professional. They are of Norse origin. And they arrived in northeast England with Newt the Great. In other words, they're not originally from England, but they'll say they're English, right? They are of Norman, Irish, Scottish, and descent. Harrison settled in Yorkshire and Durham. in northern England. But this is when the Norsemen went into England. Okay? And who's Newt the Great? Let's take a look. Newt the Great, Canute, Old Norse, the Canute, the Canaanite, Canute, Canaanite, Nanook of the north, Canuck, right? King of England from 1016, King of Denmark from 1018, King of Norway until his death. A Danish prince, all right? A Viking of northwestern Europe. Now, we know the Vikings were originally black, but there were also the white Norse Vikings who came and settled in Britain. Okay? This is all the Anglo, fallen angel seed, Norse influence. And what do we see? We see the eagle, right? We see the bird. All right? Norse influence over Scotland was weak and ultimately did not last by the time of Newt's death. All right? So they're considered an important link in that maritime zone. All right? So back to this. All right. So Harrison was a friend and confidant of fellow Virginian George Washington in 1775, and he joined Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Lynch on the committee to help newly appointed General Washington secure much-needed enlistments and supplies for the Continental Army. Harrison also served on the Board of War with Adams, Roger Sherman, James Wilson, Edward Rutledge, and the Committee of Secret Correspondence. So they were doing all kinds of secret, clandestine things with Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Johnson, Robert Morris, etc., and John Dickinson. Now, there was a Reverend Thomas Harrison, a chaplain for Henry Cromwell, that's son of Oliver Cromwell, all right, who is the one who drove the Black Scots and Black British out of Britain, okay? And Lord Wharton, his assistant who didn't agree with that, actually willed my family a Bible, okay? That's on my Gentile side. And he is the founder of Harrisonburg, all right? So Harrisonburg is a city, I think it's in Kentucky, I believe. Don't quote me on that, and I'm not going into that. It's not the point of this. It's family tree. All right, so he's saying he's from England. So here's the Harris line. Harris, Herod, King Herod, okay? Says the geographical origins would be London, England, right? Now remember, as I said before, the giants were taken by Esau, Edom, Prester John, okay? So this is the Harris line. Legends of Dune and Ogre are based on the activities of the family descended from Duon and Antigone, Ogre. The legends of Ogre the Dane. So this is Og. Okay, and so this is when they're taking on the identity of the Danites, right? Who are also known as the Manan or Maine of America, where the giant ogre heads of the old Olmec are found. The Irish legend of Regamon also allude to this family. So these are the ogres. These are the Rephaim. These are the descendants of... We're going to look at Goliath in a second. But when we start to look at Haris as a name, see, all of the fallen were categorized, including the Mount Seir, under the Philistines, the king of the Amorites or the Philistines. Let's look at the Haris family crest. So they were part of the Norman conquest. Harrison. So the Amorites equals Philistine, and the Canaanites could also include the Horites of Mount Seir. So these are all the children of the fallen angels. As above, so below, or on earth as it is in heaven? Which one is it? There's two different cosmologies ruling this earth. Yahweh rules by establishing and securing the law on earth as it is in heaven. This is the difference between these two concepts. Matthew 6 and 10. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Okay, so this is the magician symbol for as above and so below. All right, so this is the satanic symbol, but this is an accurate representation of the earth and heaven above. All right. But it actually goes beyond the firmament, all right? They're calling this the shell of Brahmanda, which would be the Van Allen belt, right? Or the Shemayim, or the firmament, right? So they have a picture, they have Satan ruling from Mount Meru at the center of the earth, right? But if this was Yah ruling in heaven and there was a firmament kind of here, right, above Eden, that would be the cosmology for this. So this would be Yah's version, heaven on earth. Whereas this red version, and of course he covers the entire planet, right? But this other version, this red portion here, is really Satan's upside down church, okay? This has the children from below ruling above the earth. As above, so below. All right? So, whatever they're teaching below should be above on the earth. And the human race has been following their hermetic teachings. As above, so below. This is a concept that comes from the Emerald Tablet, a hermetic fallen angels teaching from Madame Blavatsky in this Theosophical Society. She's the author of the Kabbal Eon. In other words, the study of hermetic philosophy. So Kabbal, so Kabbalistic traditions, Kabbalah, all right, practical Kabbalah. And the root word is Ka, as in hewn, Kayun, Kyun, Canaan, hewn. Eon is age of Baal. So Kabbalah. So there it is right there with a Q, right? So that is the teaching of Satanism and Babylonianism and Kabbalah. It's all the same thing. And this is the teaching of Scripture. So Yah rules everything. The Horites, here's other, are associated with Cain, or hewn images, making idols, all right? We have a Mitch Horowitz, an occultist and philosophical mentalist, okay? An occultist and philosophical mentalist. And this belief system he has is described by the Kabbalon's first principle and the ancient Greek Hermetica. So Mount Hermon, hermeneutics, that is where the angels came down, and that is their interpretation of Scripture. Whenever you have hermeneutics, that is the fallen angel interpretation of Scripture. And Kabbalion refers to Kabbalah. But here is another man who is a proponent of these philosophical beliefs of the fallen that the Horites went around and proclaimed. Horowitz, right? And his name is Dr. Hurricus Coonrath. Cainrath, Wrath of Khan, right? Wrath of Khan. He was also a German physician, hermetic philosopher, and alchemist. Kun is Khan or Kain, Canaanite. That's the Q, the Kuf's the snake entering the earth, the sun setting in the west, right? That's the Kuf. All right. And so Yah's complaint against these kinds of people is that you have borne the tabernacle of your Molech and hewn your images. That's where it Cain your images. So that's Canaanite images. Your star of God, which you made to yourselves. So that's always Chin, Cain, Con. You're always dealing with the Canaanites when you have these words, these consonants. All right? You have taken along the tabernacle of Molech and the star of your god Remphan and the idols you made to worship. Therefore I will send you into exile beyond Babylon. For our fathers had the tabernacle of testimony with them in the wilderness. So this was the judgment against Israel, that they started making Canaan-like images and worshiping their gods. Okay? When they had the testimony in the tabernacle. The testimony means law. So you overcome by the power of your testimony of Yahusha, who is the law. So these are the tablets of the commandments that were hewn by the finger of Yah on the stones. So these are the correct hewn words, not images. All right? So like I said, their whole belief system is in strict opposition to that of Israel. And here is the Kayun, hewn image or pillar. Okay? So what do we see with the white giants? What are they dancing around? In one of their images, we have them dancing around a pillar. In this particular image, could they be receiving signals or commands from these plates on their chest? And of course they did have those giant cities, right? With all of the special structures. Horowitz, again, I already mentioned Horowitz, but here it is. We have a ton of Horowitzes writing the Jewish Encyclopedia saying they're they're Jewish. But look how many. But the name is Horite, Horowitz. Okay? And of course, Premier John Horgan, Premier of British Columbia, Canada, would have the name Horgan, Horite. I met him too. But, you know, this isn't, again, a judgment against these individuals, but it actually tells you who the people of the Amorites really are. And so this is, I'm just simply identifying these people groups by their names, so you'll know. These are the hewn images I was talking about. So also some of the family of the Sidonians, this is what they look like. They make hewn images. This is Heth's son. All right? The Sidonians, this is what they look like. These are what the people look like. Okay? This is what they look like. Sidonians. I'm just showing you the white ones because people, these are Canaanites. Canaanites. Okay? Sidonians. And these are their hewn images. Right? These are their gods they worship. Right? Okay? Now here is another reference to Horites. Horilac Park in the city of Edmonton in Canada. Horites. William Horilac. All right, he was a Ukrainian elected to city council in Alberta. I'm saying this because this is where I'm from. He's a Horite. All right, so you get an idea where some of the Ukrainians are from. They're Horites. All right, the Horites. All right, from Mount Seir, Hori. And so let's get into, again, some more of these crests. This is the Gibeonites. The Gibeonites relates to the word Gibson. What do we see again? We see the swan. Swan related to Zeus. Esau, Isus, Zeus, Jesus. Gibor. Giborim means mighty man, mighty man. So this then applies also to the mighty man of David, the mighty man of renown, and the giants at those times. They were giants in the earth, and they became known as mighty men of renown. So it applies both to the Israelites, David's mighty man. So who was it? Nimrod was a mighty hunter before Yahuwah. He was in his face. He was up in his face challenging Yahuwah. But David had mighty men as well. Some were Gibborim and some were just great men. Gibeonites were not of the children of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites, and the children of Israel had sworn to them, and Saul sought to slay them to the zeal of the children of Israel and Judah. Now, the father of these was Harapha, which means Raphaim. And so there were 4 born to a giant Raphaim, Harapha, that fell by the hand of David and by the hands of his servants. And so here is Gibeon, all right, Duri. This is actually an ancient leader, Lord Duri. Alexander Gibson, Lord Deary. So we're talking about the Gibson family. Also a baronet of Nova Scotia. Scottish judge and legal writer. All right, so what else can we find out about the Gibsons? Well, here's just some more of the... So Gibson, Mel Gibson, it says he's a Scottish. So it says Rapha, or Harapha, was a giant who had 5 sons, Goliath, Ishbi, Benob, Saph, or Sapai, Lami, and the unnamed 4th brother. Now this, and it says, so did Goliath have 4 brothers and sons. So this isn't a quote from the Bible, but this part is. This is from an article. So this could actually, some people say that Goliath is Harapha. All right. So these were born unto Harapha at Gath and fell by the hand of David and by the hands of his servants. So they slayed them all. Okay, and they all had 6 fingers. So these are the Gibsons. So these are the children of the fallen. Gibborim, because Gibborim are mighty men and giants. All right? And so these are the Gibborim. They are Nephilim. And so here's the connection to Mel Gibson and Gibborim. 6-fingered mystical giant deities. Gibborim. All right? Rite of blood, a ritual sacrifice. All right, and they have a pride. Who else has a pride celebration, right? So they feed off of each other. They will offer your life and your soul, as we do a maiden from Imperio every year to our masters, the Gibborim. You will die so the world can live. So that's what they do. All right, that is what they do. And the family tree of Mel Gibson. Here we have Mel Gibson, who is Gibborim. So these are giants born to Goliath or to his father. It's still up, and it can get a little bit confusing. Okay, but there seem to be 4 brothers of Goliath. See, Lami, the brother of Goliath, the Gittite whose spear staff was like a weaver's beam. Lachmi. So Lami was one of the names, right? Am I correct? Lami was one of the giants. And so let's look up the Lami people. Let's see what they look like. Okay, it's saying forbidden, but it says the last name Lami, forebearers.io, is the 569th most numerous family worldwide, born by approximately 13 million people. The surname occurs mostly in Europe. People also searched for, what did Goliath look for? Ananakites. Remember, we always said Ani or Anani is always symbolizing giants or the Rephaim. Okay? Lami, Goliath and his brothers. So let's see what these people look like. It can also sound like Lakshmi. Lakshmi sounds kind of East Indian, right? Then they look very East Indian, don't they? Lami or Lakshmi. These are the Lami people. Lakshmi. Lakshmi Ma. So you see a lot of the gods of the East Indians appearing, right? Lakshmi is a famous god. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. All right. And this is a transgender person named Lakshmi. All right, so that's in the tradition of, those kinds of things are in the tradition of the fallen, those kinds of practices, right? Now there was another name that came up just now, and I just want to check it out. Now this is from the Geneva Bible, but I'm going to go back to the King James, but we're going to look at these names. Saph. All right, and Harafa. All right, back to Saph now. This is another thing I need to add. Saph. Now, just so you know, and you can be assured, there are North African Saphs. So there's a lot of white-skinned people, though, in Saph. But this is what I mean. It's not a skin thing, because we know the Somalians are Canaanites. They are descendants of Esau, Edom, and they trace their genealogy to Canaan as well, and they're black. And so there are Africans who are Saphe as well, and sometimes Sabbe, Sabaeans. All right, so these are Hamites, okay? But these are North African people, so you're going to find they're white and they're black. They're white and they're black. All right, so this is not a race thing, it's a race thing. It's a race thing. All right, here it is, the same scripture. Shibana. His dwelling was in Nob. I don't know if that's tied to nobility. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. So, a Philistine. All right? Philistine giants who we know now were the Amorites. Right? What was I saying here as well? 18, verse 18 here says Saph was slain. So let's look up Saph. So we can look at some of these names and find out who these people are just by looking at their names. So we can even look at Philishti. So we do have a huge Palester family in North America, thousands and thousands of them. Okay, fams, could Nancy Pelosi be a Philistine? Well, let's take a look. So we've been over this one a million times, right? Babylon is Egypt. Babylon of Egypt, the priests of On come from Egypt, all right? Ontario, Toronto, all right? So, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, he was a priest of On. She was the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On for Heliopolis. All right? Egyptian name means gift of the sun god. That's what Asenath meant. Okay? A zenith. A zenith. All right? A zenith. What it says here, just moving further down near to the end of the paragraph, and the king sent to Potiphar, son of Aram, the priest of On. So Hiram, that was the name. Hiram is one of the names of the Canaanites and people of Mount Seir. Okay? Hiram Abiff, right? Okay. So On was the name of an Egyptian city, and Cairo was also known as On. And of course, Esau, Edom, was the ruler over Cairo, the On that was in the land of Shem. Okay? So he took over the line of the Shemites, who were Babylonians, and he took over the Egyptian Babylonian Empire. All right, we've been over that many times. So it's very important to note here, family, that there was a season when David was wandering and warring with the Philistines. They thought he was on their side, and he had a lot of mighty men among him that were a combination of fallen angels, seeds, offspring of fallen angels, Philistines, and a combination of Israelites who had abandoned Saul. So he really had a mixed multitude with him. And that is a picture of whenever Israel is cast out, becomes the outcast, they gather a mixed multitude to them before they return to the land. Okay? And so these men were called Gibborim, David's mighty men. And so it applied both to the men of Israel and to those among the Philistines who were with David. All right? And so, when we go into it, if we start to look at the list of some of these men, we hear this in the story where David, some of his mighty men go and he asks for water from Bethlehem, and they go and get it from the garrison of the Philistines in Bethlehem, his mighty men. And he's so ashamed, he just pours it out on the ground unto Yah. So he says, David longed and said, oh, that one would give me a drink of water of the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate. And then 3 mighty men broke through the host of the Philistines, drew water out of the well of Bethlehem that was by the gate, and took it and brought it to David. Nevertheless, he would not drink thereof. He poured it out unto Yahuwah. And he said, far be it from me, O Yahuwah, that I should do this. Is not this the blood of the men that went in jeopardy of their lives? Therefore he would not drink it. These things did these 3 mighty men. And Abishai, the brother of Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was chief among the 3. And he lifted up his spear against 300 and slew them, and had a name among 3. And he was he not the most honorable of the 3? For he was their captain, howbeit he attained not unto the first 3. And Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man of Kabzeel, who had done many acts, he slew 2 lion-like men of Moab, and he went down also and slew a lion in the midst of a pit in the time of snow. And he slew an Egyptian, a goodly man, an Egyptian. The Egyptian had a spear in his hand, and he went down on him with a staff and plucked the spear out of the Egyptian's hand and slew him with his own spear. These things did Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and had the name among the 3 mighty men. He was more honorable than the 30, but he attained not the first 3. David set him over his guard. Asahel, the brother of Joab, was one of the 30. Elhanan, the son of Dodo of Bethlehem. Shema the Harodite, Elikah the Harodite, Helez the Paltite, Erah the son of Akesh the Tekonite, So it goes into a number of them here, okay? But what I want to show you here is that when we get down, because some of these are Israelites and some of these are actually, we have a Hittite here, okay? And it says Era and Ithrite, Gareb and Ithrite, and Uriah the Hittite. So these are the 37 mighty men, okay? So I just am saying this to say there was a righteous man considered righteous among Israel, okay? Even though he was a Hittite, he was amongst the mighty men of David. And so when we go into this, there's a lot of verses. And so this, in the story of David and Bathsheba, this is the husband of Bathsheba. He's a Hittite. Okay? And he is the one that David's men placed in a place in the war where he was killed. Okay? And so when David impregnated Sheba, he refused to go and sleep with Sheba. And so David had him killed. Uriah the Hittite. All right? So shooters shot from a wall, and Uriah the Hittite was dead also. A descendant of Heth, second son of Canaan. So he was a Hittite that David himself sinned against. And Sheba may well have been an Egyptian, okay? Egyptian woman. See how fear and terror is associated with the giants. They are called the original terrorists. But, so all that to say they were righteous among the children of the fallen, and there were injustices done to them. All right? And, you know, we've already said that they were Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaim. So we're going to go into more of who they were. But I just want to start with that so that we understand that not all of the fallen angel seed is considered unrighteous or unworthy to Yah. And in fact, he does say that he is going to mix the seed of Israel and Judah with the seed of man and beast. So please remember that. All right. So what does it say here? Chittim. Chittim corresponds to the Hittites. All right. And to Rome. And there's a connection ultimately with Zipho, but it actually really starts with Esau-Edom mixing in with Chittim. So let's find out who these people are. Who are the Hittites? Now we've already gone into these genealogies, but here we're going to go into it again. Genesis 10 and 15. This talks about who the Canaanites are once again. So these are Chittim are the Sidonians. So it says, and Canaan begat Sidon. On, remember the priests of On. So these people are going to be living in a place where there's lots of Ons going on. Priests of Ons happening. So Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth. So Heth is Chittim, all right? And Ephron dwelt among the children of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the audience of the children of Heth, even of all that went in at the gate of the city, saying, etc., etc. So these are the Hittites dealing with Abraham when he's returning to the land of Canaan. The land of Canaan is not the land of the Canaanites, it's the land of Israel stolen by the Canaanites, and then they call it by their name, because they always steal identities and lands, all right? And keep in mind, family, there's a lot of black Italians, there's a lot of white-looking Italians. This is not about race, one more time. Well, it's not about skin color, but it's about the race, all right? It's about the race, the head, the leader, but it's not about skin color, because we've got We've got enemies on both sides, all right, of the skin game, all right? So the ships of Solomon seem to have gone to Tarshish in Spain, and Cyprus is known as Chittim, okay? Now, this is a conflation of two different things here. So that's what people will often say, that Cyprus and Chittim was in Spain. No, Chittim was in the land of Ham, which would be in North America, all right? And the land of Japheth, which is North America, all right? So Chittim and the Greeks of the Asiatic continent were known as the Ionians under the name of Yawan, okay? Or we can see now the island was like the island of Japan too. That's the land of Japheth, okay? Yavan. Later, the Persians became known as Chittim, and the Aryans of Armenia did not enter the land of the east until 7th century BC. So this is just telling you some regional stuff, but Cyprus is known as Chittim. Okay, Cyprus is known as Chittim. So Chittim can be the Hittites or Chittites. So this is where we're seeing where the original name comes from, because they're always rebranding their names, their gods, everything. All right? Same with Israel. When they're on the run, they got to change their name because they're a byword. They got a bad name. So these people are a byword. They have a bad name, and they're always trying to be Israel, trying to rebrand themselves. So these are the children of Heth, and then there's the daughters of Heth are mentioned. The Chittim, the women of Chittim. So we're going to find out that Edom mixed in directly with them. All right, so here's a lot of the scriptures that refer to them if you want to look them up, okay? So the plural form of the word is Chittim or Hittites, okay? So this is what the Biblical Cyclopedia is telling us about the Hittites, okay? Hittite, or rather Chittite. So this is how we know these are Canaanites. All right, they're Canaanites. So the Romans are Canaanites, and we're going to find out Canaanites mixed with Esau, Edom. All right, Chittim, the Hittites. So this is Boston, and we see all these Roman statues, right? In Boston, so we know this is the land, the southern lands of Japheth. It's Boston, okay? And then it's married to or I guess the northern lands of Ham, all right? So America would be the land of Ham, and Canada would be the land of Japheth, okay? And so how do we know this according to genealogy? Well, Genesis says the wives of Esau were Judith, daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. So these are both the people of Chittim. The people of Chittim. And who was the father of Zepho? The father of Zepho was Eliphaz. Here we have Eliphaz, all right? So here's Esau. He's got Basemath. He's got these two wives who are descended from Elion, all right? And they give birth, Esau, Edom, and Adah give birth to Eliphaz. So when we're talking about James Elephantis of the whole pizza scam, right? The whole Kemet pizza. Remember, I said it's not Comet, it's Kemet. Kemet pizza scam. He's a descendant, Elephantis, James Elephantis. He's a descendant of Eliphaz. And so this child of Eliphaz was Zipho. Okay? Zipho, the foe of Israel. Zipho of Israel. All right? Son of Eliphaz. So, Jasher, this talks about Zipho in the future. Okay, so Zipho was one of the sons of Eliphaz, saw that Aegeus despaired of going forth to battle with the Egyptians. So Zipho fled from Aegeus, from Africa, and he went and came unto Chittim. And the children of Chittim saw the valor of Zipho. Now this should be Apharo, this should be actually Ham's land. And saw the valor of Zipho, and the children of Chittim resolved, and they made Zipho the king over them. Okay, because they needed a king to fight these wars. Somebody who was really strong. And Zipho is a son, a descendant of, and we're going to see that in a minute, a descendant of Esau Edom. After he was captive to Israel in the land of Egypt. All right, so that's why he was running from the Afaro Cans. So it's not the real Africans of what we call Africa today, but he was running from the Hamitic pharaohs, Hamitic Cushites, okay? So he became king, Zipho became king over Chittim. Whilst he reigned, they went to subdue the children of Tubal Cain, and all surrounding islands, and their king Zipho went at their head, etc., etc. And they made a large throne for him, and Zipho reigned over the whole land of Chittim and over the land of Italia 50 years. So this is the Italians. Chittim are the Italians. And what do we see in the last slide? They are the Hittites, the Chittites. Okay? All right, and so he's the ruler of the Italians of Italy. Right? And so eventually, they go on and they take over the whole Edomite kingdom. All right? So here's another image. And I always talk about how Ontario and Onto, these are the priests of On. These are the Greek and Roman Gentiles, the descendants of the fallen. These people are the Canaanites. And so if they're Italian, right, let's go more into this. This is from Jewish History, all right, .com, okay. Chittim, or Hittites, are Rome, the Italians. History informs us that Edom was conquered by Albanus, right, Albianus, king of Chittim. Okay, so that was after Zipho mixed in with them, okay? So now, because they wouldn't go with Zipho. So now what happens is that his lineage in Chittim then conquers Edom. And Edom became under the children of Chittim from that day. And this is according to Joshua, right? And this is the reason the prophet Isaiah speaks in his 23rd chapter connectively of Edom and Chittim as one and the same place and people. So Rome, Edom, and Christianity became and are synonymous with Babylon, and therefore called mystical Babylon. What? Priests of Ontario and Toronto, right? We know too, and are certain that all Protestants first separated themselves and came out from Rome, or the Roman Catholics in the 16th century at the Reformation. So we see Protestants are of the seed of Rome, and Rome is of the seed of Chittim, or Chittim. Okay, and that's in Joshua chapter 9. All right, we see these connections where Chittim defeats Edom, and Edom becomes integrated with Chittim. All right? And so, could Nancy Pelosi be a Philistine? Well, all of the Philistines are indeed. All of the Philistines are indeed Canaanites. And so that includes the Hittites. All right? So, oops, spelled that wrong. So, they are all the same people. All right, so the Italians, so that would make Nancy Pelosi as an Italian, it would make her a Hittite. All right, so she would be a Philistine. The Goliath, the Gittite, that's a Hittite, right? But he's also an Amorite, and he's also a Philistine. See, Hittite there too, Gittite. Sometimes it's Hittite, sometimes it's Gittite. All right, and his brother was Lakshmi. So we see how these are just the Canaanites, and even the Horites are mixed in among them, okay? It's very important to remember that. And so we always return again to one of our most prominent people born in North America. But these are the white giants of America here, okay? This is the book. And there's their God that is their stomach, right? And they eat and sacrifice human beings, people, and this is them doing one of their spiritual practices here. You see demonic activity, and they mark their bodies with tattoos. Okay? And their ball heads, these are wigs they're wearing, as I said before. And so these are the true original Germans. These aren't white people. These are black people. Okay? And they're carrying shofars. So they have shofars in their hand. Okay, he's holding a shofar. Now, this is what the scriptures, sorry, not the scripture, but this is what this book says, this account. The German Palatines were early 18th century immigrants from the Middle Rhine region of the Holy Roman Empire, including a minority of the Palatinate, which gave its name to the entire group. So, Palatines. I palat my hair. That's what we always said in Jamaica. They say you're going to plait your hair. Palat your hair. Palatines. Okay? Which gave its name to the entire group towards the end of the 17th century and into the 18th. The wealthy region was repeatedly invaded by French troops, which resulted in a continuous military requisitions, widespread devastation, and famine. The poor Palatines were some 13,000 Germans who migrated to England between May and November 1709. So this is after King James' rightful heirs got pushed out, right? Around that time anyway. Their arrival in England and the inability of the British government to integrate them caused a highly politicized debate over the merits of immigration. The English tried to settle them in England, Ireland, and the colonies. The Palatine settlements did not prove to be viable in the long term except for those in the county of Limerick and Wexford in Ireland and in the colony of New York in British North America. The British colony of North America. The English transported nearly 3,000 German Palatines in 10 ships to New York in 1710. Many of them were first assigned to work in work camps along the Hudson River to work off their passage. Close to 850 families settled in the Hudson River Valley. So that's just down from Montreal, okay? This is before Canada was a country. Canada was not really officially a country until 75 to 80 years ago, okay? So it's not been too long. So it's really one country. If you're Canadian or American, just get it out of your head that they're two different countries. They're not. They're both colonies of Britain. They're both part of the mother country, Britain, okay? And they settled in the river valley, primarily in what is now known as Germantown, the Saugerites of New York, all right? And there were 100 heads of families from the work camps, and these were the first Europeans. What did I say? The first Europeans. What did I say? The first Europeans. These are Europeans. They're black. All right, we're going to get into it a little more. To acquire land west of Little Falls, New York, in present-day Kirker County, on both the north and south sides of the Mohawk River. All right, Canada and the United States, not just United States. All right, And they settled along the Mohawk River for several miles in towns such as Palatine Bridge and Shoalhaar Valley. And so how did the bald-head Benjamin Franklin think about this? Benjamin Franklin on the German, 1775, since the detachments of English from Britain were sent to America. Since detachments of English from Britain sent to America will have their places at home so soon supplied and increase so largely here, why should the Palatine Boers, okay, now some of them could be Edomites, right? Beor is an Edomite. These could be the black Edomites, right? Be suffered to swarm into our settlements by herding together, establish their languages and manners to the exclusion of ours. Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, the Anglish, these are the Anglish, right? They got an angle on something. The Anglish, descendants of the fallen angels, become a colony of aliens who will shortly become so numerous as to Germanize us instead of our Anglifying them, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion. Why? Because they're white-skinned. Which leads me to add one remark: the number of purely white people in the world is proportionately very small. All Africa is black, okay? So everybody who thinks that Africa was white or full of white Canaanites all the time, mostly, all Africa is black or tawny. Asia chiefly tawny. America, exclusive of newcomers, wholly so. So that's as accounted for in John Ogilvy's book. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also, Saxons only excepted, who with the English make the principal body of white people. So the Anglo-Saxons are the principal white people on the face of the earth, the Augeans. I would wish their numbers were increased while we are, as I may call it, scouring our planet by clearing America of woods. This is, when they refer to woods, this is not only trees, it's people. And so making this side of our globe reflect a brighter light to the eyes of the inhabitants of Mars or Venus. So that's the fallen angel gods. Why should the sight of superior beings darken its people? Why should we, in the sight of superior beings, darken its people? Why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America, where we have so fair an opportunity, by excluding all blacks and tawnies, of increasing the lovely white and red? Perhaps I'm partial to the complexion of my country, for such kind of partiality is natural to mankind. All right, so here's images of them there, but look, this is a whitewashed Edomite. Okay, they painted his face white. This is during the captivity and slavery. We see, again, as I just showed you guys before, it's lots of ballets. Also, we have this account of who the real Europeans are. Early transatlantic slave trade. This is from the College Digital Library at the College of Charleston. This is an edict from Isabella and Ferdinand saying, during the early transatlantic slave trade, Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella to Nicholas Obando, allowing black slaves of African descent to be imported to Hispaniola, here like known as Democratic Republic in Haiti, September 1501, courtesy of, that's after 1492, right? Archivio General de India, Sevilla, Spain. The monarchs reasoned that recent converts, heretics, and people of other religions would harm the American Indians' conversion to Catholicism. However, they permitted slaves of sub-Saharan African descent, provided they were born in Spain. This was the first known example of Europeans transporting black slaves across the Atlantic world in the New World. All right, so the Marranos practiced Torah. That is well known. I'm going to give you another example way back, early as well. Okay, This is a departure of people to Florida. Spanish settlements in the 1513, 1561, Spanish settlements within the United States and the Florida area around this time. Okay? And so, so he's worried about the colonists being contaminated by Jews, Moors, and Moranos. But here we have this particular colonizer undertaking a conquest of Florida in 1565. Okay. This Alviales was to undertake the conquest of Florida, and this was executed March 20th, 1565. It disposed of the rights of prior adventurers, and especially those in the last asiento made by another person, Alion. Okay, so this is a lot of context to this, but let's just get into the meat of this. And it says he was granted the privilege of transporting to Florida 500 Negro slaves taken from Spain. Where were they taken from? Spain, Portugal, and Cape de Verde Islands of Guinea, whom 1/3 were to be women, to assist in the construction of towns and cultivation of land and planting of sugarcane and manufacture of sugar. Okay, and then he had to take 100 horses, lambs, all kinds of things. Okay, so these 500 Negro slaves, they were imported to Florida as a prerequisite of Menendez on his failure to bring them to severe labor, which they were intended to perform, would fall upon the few white colonists, or in their default upon those of their Indian neighbors who the Spaniards might be able to impress. So in other words, they were to be the slaves of all these people, so they wouldn't have to labor. Okay? The Native Americans would not submit to slavery. Now, why were these particular people submitting to slavery? Because they understood that it was for a season and for a reason. And within the family of Israel, you could become a servant of your brother or a member of your family for a period of 7 years. And so they began to build societies and cultures based on Torah, biblical law. For those of you who are into the free man movement, this is how biblical law became established in North America, because these people were being enslaved on those terms. And that's why they went from a 7-year term of slavery to chattel slavery, because the Black Edomites changed the law. They departed from Torah. Okay? But that's why the whole of North America was initially a golden cup in the hands of Yah, because they were initially trying to practice biblical law. And it came with these people who were captive to Ishmael and Esau, Edom. And so these are the trades that they practiced, and this is why we say, and these were Hebrews, they were Christians, and so they were using Torah to establish laws as they took over land in those areas. They were establishing the laws according to Torah, okay? Because this was Esau bringing Jacob with him. So Black Edomites bringing Jacob over as slaves. There were 21 tailors who sailed in this double capacity, 15 carpenters, 10 shoemakers. All of the trades were represented: millers, masons, silversmiths, gardeners, berbers, hat makers, even a weaver of silk and a brewer in ale, and 137 soldiers representing among them 38 trades, all right? Besides 117 tillers of the soil. Okay, so that's what is in this book. Okay, and so again, we have our pictures of King James, his father and mother, obviously brown, light-skinned people, all right? Lord Darnley and Queen Mary. We also have the proof of the Black Danes, all right? And they were known as Niger and Rufus. Rufus and Shaka Khan, right? And these were the Dubs or Duff or Macduff. So this is where you get the Mac from, the Maccabees, Macduff, etc. Magadoob, the Dubes. So this is a Kenneth Dube, who ruled the blacks and whites in Scotland. This is from ancient modern Britain. This is a description of the original people of Scotland, okay? It says the inhabitants of this isle are generally well proportioned and their complexion is for the most part black. They are not obliged to art in the forming of their bodies, and nature never fails to act on her part bountifully towards them. And perhaps there is no part of the habitable globe where so few bodily imperfections are to be found, nor any children that go more early. I've observed several of them walk alone before they were more than 10 months old. Celt is a term for Negroes originally. Now, I've said before, I suspect the Celts were black because they were probably, I think Japheth might have originally been black because their mountains were called Celt, according to Jasher. But it does say here that the Celts were originally black. So we see the Celts are black, the original Vikings were black, and this becomes a case of stolen identity. And what they did was they took the descendants of the giants, the white giants, and brought them over. Esau Edom did, brought them over to Europe to begin to establish the kingdoms of the Rothschilds and so once again, remember, there was a grand conspiracy to hide the West for a season while Esau Edom repopulated it, covered stuff up, and also the Chinese and the sons of Japheth drew the map of the world into this single map of just really, it's the West and the East, the continent of Africa, which includes Western Europe, and then China and Australia and what they call Eastern Europe, which is really the land of Japheth. And so they redrew the map, and according to this book, Aristotle says that beyond the Pillars of Hercules, they say that the inhabited islands were discovered by the Carthaginians. Well, the Carthaginians are from America, which abounded with forests and navigatable rivers and fruits of all kinds. And while the Carthaginians were engaged in making voyages to this land, well, they came from there. They even settled there on account of the fertility of the soil. And then the Senate decreed that no one after, under penalty of death, should voyage thither. And Aristotle was born 384 years before Christ. So that was during the captivities, after the Babylonian captivity, and the 10 tribes were still there in the West. As I say, watch my Prester John videos, watch my series on America is Egypt, and all my videos on Shem, the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth go into this in detail and who the people are. So that is how the Dutch East India Company and the Dutch West Indian Company changed the borders of East and West and mixed around all the people. So in The Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky goes into these different races because they were blending and mixing the races, right? They were creating races of people. The Pedigree of Man considers the Australians of today as the lineal descendants, almost unchanged, of that second branch of the primitive human race that spreads northwards, at first chiefly in Asia, from the home of man's infancy, and seems to have been the parent of all other straight-haired races of men. So once again, this is a time when Yah says, "Behold, the days will come, saith Yahuwah, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah with the seed of man and with the seed of beast." And so this was a time when the fallen angels, Israel was used to upgrade the fallen angel seed the seed of Israel, cut off for their parts. And it's a time when salt water will be found in the sweets. So this is when the continent split, and so you have the 7 rivers that are between North America and Africa that are this Gulf streams that move the ships from Africa to the west. And so that is the salt water mixed in with the sweet, okay? And it says, and it is in this season that wisdom shall withdraw into its chamber, and it shall be sought by many, but not be found. In the end, righteousness and unrestraint shall increase in the earth, and blood shall drop out of wood, and stone shall give his voice, and the people will be troubled. And even he shall rule, whom they look not for that dwell upon the earth, and the fowls shall take their flight away together. And the Sodomite sea shall cast out fish, and make a noise in the night, which many have not known. But they shall all hear the voice thereof. And there shall be a confusion also in many places. And the fire shall oft be sent out again. And the wild beasts shall change their places. And menstruous women shall bring forth monsters. So that has already been happening since the fall of Israel. And it will become increased in the captivity of the Gentiles as the times of the Gentiles is over. So in their punishment and judgment, it will be even worse. So we all have to pray that we enter into the house of Yah. You leave the house of your fathers, just as Abraham had to. And everyone returns and enters into the house of Yah. In Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, it talks about the Near East and Far East. And Iswaris is Esau, and the Assyrians, the Shemitic Assyrians from Persia, who had very much mixed in with this religion of the giants. And they also talk about the apocryphal Acts of St. Thomas and the apostle moving easily between Persia and India. In each of the 3 Indias, who describe exploits of the apostle Thomas and Matthew in each of the 3 Indias. And the concept was more standard in one of the Middle Ages, that one of the 3 Indias faced Ethiopia. The second one faced Persia. The third occupied the ends of the earth between the ocean and the realm of darkness. Again, fam, these are the true Amorites. And once again, you have to make a person white according to the Kabbalah in order to make them a slave. You have to bleach them out. And it was Yah's plan to then use that for good. So once again, the prophecy was fulfilled for Israel, the cutting off of Israel to be the grafting in of the Gentiles on multiple levels. They were burned to ashes, and that ash was used to purify the Gentile nations. Because when Noah was born, he was born white like the angels, and his eyes lit up the room. And this was for a sign and a prophecy that things would change. They would begin to eat meat after the flood. And so after the flood, those who are faithful to the image and the way of Yahuwah maintain all their melanin, so their genetics can't be altered as easily by the fallen angel's seed or by radiation or any of the strange grafting in. And then we have examples like Jonah of Nineveh, who could have possibly been bleached by the fish. So when he went to preach to these fallen angel people, they changed him looking like them, and it became a prophecy of what would happen to Israel in the future. We also have the prophecy where Gazi, the servant of Elijah, is turned white after Nahum, the king of Damascus, who's also Assyrian, is washed in the waters of Jerusalem, and his skin color comes back to him. But because Gazi is greedy and wants money, for this service, even though the king turned his heart towards Yah. In effect, it's Freaky Friday. It's Israel changes places. It's prophetic for Israel changing places with the nations. They are spiritually bleached white, even though many maintain the seed. And so this is how the cutting off of Israel is a blessing to the Gentiles. And so Yah uses what the enemy meant for evil for good. And so, but the seed still matters, of course, because Yah changes not. And so that's how the Amorite kings became white, because of the diet of the fallen angels, defilement, impurity, and were grafted back in through the seed of Israel and the culture and the seed of Yahusha. And that's why the seed still matters.
And I'll say the want to say. I'm an American.
Oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 no.
And so once again, family, the conclusion of the matter is still fear Yah and keep his commandments. Baruch atah. Thank you everyone for your donations and support. It means a lot. And subscribe or simply become a member into alltruth.net to get updates on videos and educational materials.
Suba, Aleph, Yasharel, Yahweh. And may the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come.
I'm giving recognition to the Most High Yahuwah. I'm giving thanks and praises for the many blessings I receive from His favor.